Skip Schwartz joins me this week to discuss innovation in flavored barrel-aged stouts. This is BeerSmith Podcast number 321. This is BeerSmith Podcast number 321, and it's early March 2025. Skip Schwartz joins me this week to discuss innovation in barrel-aged stouts. Thank you to this week's sponsors, Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine. They recently added a new collection of more than 500 beer recipes from pro brewers to their site, and most let you download the BeerSmith recipe file. The new craft beer and brewing recipe site is at beerandbrewing.com/beer-recipes. Again, that site is beerandbrewing.com/beer-recipes. And BeerSmith Web, the online version of BeerSmith brewing software. BeerSmith for the web lets you design great beer recipes from any browser, including your tablet or phone. Edit recipes on the go with access to the same full suite of recipe building tools as our desktop version. Try BeerSmith Web today by creating a free account at beersmithrecipes.com. And finally, a reminder to click those like and subscribe buttons on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, or whatever platform you're listening on. Clicking those buttons is a great way to support the show. And now let's jump into this week's episode. Today on the show, I welcome Skip Schwartz from WeldWerks Brewing. Skip is the head brewer at WeldWerks, and today he joins us to update us on barrel-aged brewing techniques. Skip, it's great to have you on the show. How are you doing today?
Good, Brad. It's good to be back. It's been a while.
Always a pleasure. Yeah, I think I had you on about a year ago is what I remember.
Right.
It was actually, let's see, I got it here, last July, and we talked about hazy IPAs. What have you been up to this last 9 months?
Oh, man, we've had a busy 9 months over here at WeldWerks. We celebrated our 10th anniversary. We also hosted our invitational festival with 45 of our good friends and brewers from all over the country here in Greeley, Colorado. We had really good attendance, about 1,200 people over the course of 2 sessions were here. So I think it's been a really successful 9 months. We made it through another year, so that's always good. Distribution's picking up for us, and everything's feeling good.
That's pretty amazing. So you guys have only been in business for 10 years. I actually thought it was a little bit longer than that.
Yeah, it feels longer, but yeah, it was 10
I was
years
doing sessions probably about then with your founder, Neil, I think, right?
Yeah, definitely. Neil would definitely have been doing some podcasting back then. He's a little bit more quiet now, but still sometimes you can find him out and about.
So let's see. Back in episode 287, I had you on to discuss barrel-aged stouts, and we talked quite a bit about how you formulated and brewed your barrel-aged stout. But this time you want to talk a little bit more about the later stages of brewing. What are some of the things you've changed, though, recently or done recently? I think you mentioned you have some very specific things you were doing with adjuncts and also coffee.
Yeah, I mean, adjuncts are something that we've kind of always played around with, and we've definitely are always striving to find the best way to do each ingredient. Something like coffee, like you said, is like we have a very, very strict procedure with coffee. Roasted things tend to give off that green pepper flavor. And I personally love coffee beers, but I hate when they get green peppery. So I'm very, very particular on how we do coffee. We usually shoot for about 1 pound to 1.5 pounds per barrel on our coffee beers. So 1.5 pounds per 31 gallons. We use whole bean exclusively. And then we bag them and we put them into our adjunct vessels. So our adjunct vessels here at WeldWerks are temperature controlled, and so they're basically like a mash tun. So they have B-wire false bottoms, and then they have a bunch of true bottoms. So we're pulling off, and we're able to, kind of run the beer through it like you would in a mash tun or a lauter tun. And then we're able to hook up a pump and recirculate. So we're able to kind of, continuously pretty much we're Vorloffing on whatever adjunct we're using. So with coffee, we're very particular, 55 degrees temperature. So sometimes, we're making sure that we're really cold. It's not super cold, but it's colder than, a normal extract would be for us. And that's deliberate. So we're going a lot slower. It's a little bit more closer to what they do to make cold brew. It's a little warmer than a cold brew temperature. I'm pretty sure, if I recall correctly, cold brew is usually around 40 degrees. So it's a little bit warmer, so we get a little bit quicker. Again, we don't want too long. So we usually do 24 to 48 hours on our coffee. And this is really
Wow.
important to us that after 24 hours, we're kind of tasting it often. So we have sample valves on the tank, and we're making sure that if you walk by, try to go once an hour, once every other hour, while we're in the building. Someone's trying to taste it to make sure we're not pulling any of that green pepper flavor. And if once we get what tastes like a really bright, crisp, clean coffee flavor, we're gonna take it off that coffee beans as soon as possible. So, like I said, the quicker the better. 48 hours max is what we're looking for. Usually, I think it ends up being around 30, 36 hours. But we really like I said, a really crisp, clean coffee flavor. I think sitting on coffee for too long, again, we'll get green pepper, but also just stale coffee. Coffee that sat on your desk for an hour. The coffee that I probably have sitting on my desk right now after this interview will probably taste like that. We don't want that. We want really crisp, clean coffee flavors. So, that's something that we're always focusing on over here. And stuff that we've changed in the blending process, not really much. The sizes have kind of changed for some of our stuff. We're definitely doing a lot of big blends because we do national releases of Media Noche now. We're doing about 2 a year. So that's something that's kind of changed. Just the absolute quantities that we're doing are way bigger than we ever have before. So it's kind of fun, but when you have to go in and taste make a blend of 28 barrels, it can be kind of a little bit more complicated than back in the days when we were doing 2 to 12 barrels. So it's
So that,
definitely a learning curve, but
so
something
that I
we've
mean that's
enjoyed.
interesting. Can we dive into that a little bit? You're doing a lot of
Of course.
blending now, I guess, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, the blending process for us would be we'll pull nails. So if you're not familiar with that term, we actually have nails, stainless steel nails, in the head of our barrels. So that's the flat parts for, again, people who aren't familiar with the terminology of barrels. So the flat parts on either end of the barrel,
Mm-hmm.
we'll have a stainless steel nail in there. Again, stainless steel is very important so it doesn't rust, create any off flavors or any contaminations into our beer. Um, so we'll actually have a nail in the head. We'll pull the nail, and that pin size hole from the nail hole will, you know, we'll be able to pull a sample out of that way. That way, we're not disturbing the top of the barrel by putting something in. Risk of sanitation, extra oxidization. So we'll definitely take a little sample, and that's where we'll pull the sample, and then we'll sit down and we'll taste beers. When you're talking about, again, like I said, this next release that we're doing of Coconut Media Noche for national distribution, that has about 28 barrels. So with 28 barrels, you can't sit down and accurately taste 28, 12 to 15% ABV beers. So we're doing them in sessions. So we'll do a couple at a time. We'll take notes. We'll have notes of things. Past blending sessions, we'll have notes of other um, stuff. And since we already decided we're doing a coconut beer, so we're looking for things with heavy chocolate, heavy vanilla. If there is a coconut aspect to it, we want that because coconuts are sweet. We're looking for drier barrels, huge oak bomb barrels. Some of our older barrels end up being really, really oaky, and those are great. By themselves, they're not necessarily great, but if they're really good to bolster that oak profile into the final beer or the bourbon profile in the final beer. So that's definitely something that we're always looking for is just unique barrels that will stand out, stand well together, but also kind of maybe push one flavor profile a little bit more forward um, in the final blend.
Well, I've always wondered if you have, let's say, a bunch of, a couple barrels that are mediocre and you got a couple barrels that are really good. Do you actually blend the mediocre beer with a good beer, or how do you handle that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, there's definitely going to be levels to it. If we have a fantastic barrel, like, this is perfect on its own, we're definitely going to try to save that for a smaller blend. But I think putting some really fantastic barrels with some really, some mediocre barrels is okay, depending on what flavors you're looking for. Maybe with something like coconut media noche, where we're adding another, an adjunct in to extend another flavor. Some of those mediocre barrels go a lot further than, say, some of the really excellent ones. So maybe you save the excellent ones for one of our non-adjuncted barrel age projects, just because we want that really unique, expressive flavor that we're enjoying to stand out more. But coconut, it will, I don't want to say cover, but it'll kind of, um, blend in together, tie together some of the more mediocre barrels. I think we're lucky enough in our program and how we do our barrels and our stuff that we don't really have too many barrels that I would say are mediocre or less than. So we've been very lucky with that. But we do have a lot of really extremely like over exceptional barrels that are when we get those, it's like, oh man, I really wish we could just release a single barrel, but that's just not where we're at this time. Or we have too many of these to release as single barrels at this point in our time. When we started, we did single barrels. When we started our barrel age releases, we were doing a lot of single barrels, and the fact that we're not able to do as many as we used to kind of does stink because we do have a lot of really, really exceptional barrels that would be fun for people to be able to taste just that one barrel alone.
So when you're blending, do you do a test blend at a certain scale and then scale it up? Is that the basic technique, or?
I mean, we do like I said, we do sessions, and then the session usually ends with like the favorite barrels being blended in and going, okay, this is good. Do we do a full 28 barrel blend? Unfortunately, at the current moment, we don't. That's probably something that we should change. But we kind of just trust in the fact with, I've been here for 6 years. When Neil's around, he's been doing this for 9 years of, the business has been 10 years, but Media No Shape Blendings for 9 years. Derek Gold, our director of operations, has been doing this. Him and I started around the same time, which is about 6 years ago to this week. So we've been together doing blending for a long time. I think we kind of trust our process and know that like if we have a good blending session and if we have 3 good blending sessions, that we're going to create a really good final product. So usually with something that large, we do not do a full blend of that. So
Yeah. Well, let's switch to some of your newer beers. You recently started a collaboration oatmeal stout with Old Elk Brewing, is what you said, at Fort Collins.
yeah.
What's different about brewing an oatmeal stout recipe versus your traditional imperial?
Yeah, actually, so it's Old Elk Distilling in Fort Collins, and they're a bourbon
Distilling, okay.
producer. Yeah, they're really great people. We've kind of worked with them over the years. We've released a couple media noches with them and done some other projects with them. But they make a fantastic bourbon. And we're working on this project with them. It hasn't. This is actually the first time we're talking about this because it's so new. But we're pretty excited about it because most of our barrel aged stouts have been really big, 12%, thick, sweet, these really sticky, long barrel aged processes, and we're moving to a shorter barrel aged with a 6.3% oatmeal stout. Media Noche probably could be considered an oatmeal stout just because the amount of oats we're using, but this is like a traditional oatmeal stout. I mean, the grain bill for this is, pale. It's got some Victory malt, some Crystal 42 row, midnight wheat, some pale chocolate. Pale chocolate's kind of like our signature. I really like to amplify that chocolate character without getting too much roast in there. And then, some Munich 10. So it's, like I said, very, very traditional oatmeal stout, old school. Like I said, 6 to 6.3%. So we're looking at like a low OG, like a 16 Plato OG versus, our Media Noche is like 32 to 38 Plato.
Wow.
So that's like 1139 in SG. So very, very big versus the oatmeal stout, like I said, it's 16.5, which is 1068 SG. So, we're looking at very, very different starting points. And we're hoping that we can kind of the beer that we were looking at when we were mimicking this is kind of Dragon's Milk from New Holland, a fantastic barrel aged beer, but it's available year round. It's available in 4 packs. It's super available, and that's kind of what we're looking to start with this project is have this will be the first time we're offering 4 pack 16-ounce cans of barrel aged stout, which we're really excited. We're going to be able to offer it at a very, competitive to our, our adjuncted stouts and sours price point. So I think it's kind of cool. It's a really good way to get people into barrel aged beers, at a nice shelf price, but also something that you can just drink a whole 4 pack and not, and be able to walk around and do stuff still, So it's a lower
Yeah.
ABV, but
Now,
still has
this
a
is
lot
just
of
a
that.
question, but are your other packaged stouts, are they available? Barrel aged stouts, are they available in a 4-pack? Are they available in some kind of a
Those are in 16 ounce, 16.9, so 500 milliliter bottles,
okay, so
and
large
those are
bottles, yeah.
exclusively, larger bottles. So about 16 ounces is probably a big pour, so it's made kind of the split. So 8 ounce per person. If you split it with you and your partner. But yeah, this will be the first time that we've really put in, and even when we've done some canned barrel aged stouts over the years, but they've always been like bigger cans or 2-pack cans. So this will be the first time that we've really tried to do a low ABV, super cost effective, and 4-pack 16 ounces. So I think it's something to just kind of bring people into our barrel aged portfolio at a lower price point, to kind of just introduce you if you're not familiar with barrel aged, or if you are, just kind of give you something else to sip on. And in between those big media noches that are kind of more of like, I want to say, a special occasion drink.
Yeah. And you aged the oatmeal stout in bourbon barrels, but you're
Uh-huh.
only you're doing a shorter age on this one, I think, versus your traditional. Why is that, and how does that affect the finished beer?
So I think the reason why we're doing the shorter age one is because the lower ABV. We think that we can really get some of the lower ABV, but also the lower gravity. I mean, like I said earlier, the median noches that are aged 20 months or longer, 18 months is the minimum before they're eligible for us to start tasting and blending. Here, that's just kind of our rule, 18 months. So the median noche just has so much sugar, and it's so complex, and we do these long 30-hour boils, and the extreme bitterness. We're talking like 120 IBUs versus the oatmeal stout is about 50 IBUs. So we're looking at this like really, really weird starting beer with median noche that requires barrel. We treat the barrels as an ingredient, and it needs a lot of time. And we're making a beer with lower starting gravity, lower ABV, lower IBUs. So we're hoping that we can kind of get a lot of the barrel a lot quicker, and that way we're able to put it out quicker. And just that way, again, it helps with our costs because we're not sitting on barrels for as long. So that will also help pass that down into that the 16-ounce 4-packs, is just having it a little bit quicker. So we're hoping that we get a lot of oak character really quick and a lot of that bourbon character really quick. Working with a local distillery like Old Elk, we're actually able to get the barrels super quick. So we haven't finished the beer yet. Well, the beer isn't in barrels yet, but it will be. Those barrels, they're going to be emptying those barrels while the beer is in tank, and then bringing them over while they're like freshly emptied. So we're talking emptied for 24 to 48 hours. So they'll be the freshest barrels we've ever filled here. So we're hoping that helps with that, just getting really fresh barrels, having those, they're still wet from the walls are still wet from bourbon, and just hoping that just helps keep the process going a lot quicker. So we're really excited about this project.
Well, you started doing some barrel aged stouts with flavoring recently. Are those based on your imperial stout recipe, or did you do something different here?
Yeah. So the flavors that we do, we've been doing since day one. We started in 2015 when we opened. One of our first beers was a coffee stout, just regular, and that's kind of what kind of got us a lot of attention. And over the years, the flavors that we've done, and the adjuncts that we've used have kind of really got our attention, or got people attention to us. So we've had very unique flavors in our barrel aged beers for a very long time. And so we're continuously trying to find new flavors, new combos, but also just kind of revisiting stuff that we really enjoy. One of our first bottle releases ever for Media Noche for our barrel aged stuff was a coconut Media Noche and a vanilla Media Noche. And, those just kind of set the tone for what our barrel program and what we were going to do with our barrel program right off the bat, and those two releases. So, to this day, we continuously are looking at, when we release Media Noche, we usually do, aside from national releases, we usually release a non-adjuncted, so, just straight barrel, alongside an adjuncted, which would be, some kind of fun flavor, some sort of, coffee, coconut, you name it. Anything that tastes good in pastry will taste good in our stout. So we've tried everything, and we're still trying to experiment, try something new we try to base it off of things that we've liked from other beers in the past, and kind of try to find ways to tie it all together in barrel aged stouts.
Now, coconut's fairly hard to work with, I would think, because it's got quite a bit of oil in it. How do you handle something like coconut in an imperial stout?
Yeah, coconut and oil are very strange. And ours, if you're familiar with any of our barrel aged coconut beers, they do usually have an oil slick, which is really rough on our head retention, which is okay though. For this style of beer, we think it's okay to have when you're pouring it, it comes out kind of motor oily, and then has just a very little head that kind of dissipates pretty quickly. But coconut is something that we have, like I said, we've rested our hat on for a long time. We like to think that we do a really good job with coconut, and that's why we do so many different coconut barrel aged stouts throughout the year. For our national release this year, like I said earlier, we're doing about 28 barrels blend. There'll be over 2,000 pounds of coconut in this. It'll require weeks of processing the coconut into and infusing the coconut into the beer because of the tank sizes. So we'll be doing different sessions.
So how does that work? I mean, you dropping coconut right into the fermentation tank? Are you
Yeah,
making a tea? What are you doing?
Yeah, so we're taking, usually we do a blend of 75% toasted coconut to 25% raw chips. Because we have the pasteurizer, I feel comfortable enough using raw chips. If you don't have a way of sanitizing those chips, I personally would not recommend using raw coconut, even though raw coconut does really have a really awesome flavor, especially when paired up with toasted coconut. So usually we're bagging that and then put it in that adjunct vessel that I was talking about earlier with the coffee. And we're putting that in usually for about 3 to 4 days. If it depends on whether it's a static rest or recirculation, depending on needs in the brew house for the pumps. We do have a limited number of pumps, so sometimes tank cleans and other things take priority over coconuts. But if we have the time, we'll recirculate it. That's usually about 3 days. But if we don't have time, then we'll rest it on just static rest on the coconut for about 5 days. We're shooting for a 2.5 pounds per gallon, which is an astronomical amount
That
of coconut.
sounds like an awful lot to me.
It is a ton of coconut. Usually when we fill our adjunct, our 12 barrel adjunct tank. Usually we'll put in, like I said, about 11 barrels of beer, and we'll get 10 out. So we're losing about a barrel of loss due to absorption, which is, like I said, a huge amount. I like to say our coconut stout is very wasteful, but the end product is so good that it's worth it. A lot of other breweries probably don't want to go as high as we do on coconut just because of the loss. But we really, really enjoy it. And I think, like I said, a huge thing to me is the blend of toasted and raw, because we're getting two different flavor profiles from each. The toasted has the really nice, crispy, some toast, some like burnt almost flavoring, while the raw is kind of more creamy, coconut, like coconut cream, like in your pina colada. So I like having both in there, but I don't like having it at a 50-50. 75-25 blend is kind of where we landed, and we're very happy with it.
And how do you balance the flavor? I mean, how do you decide 2,000 pounds or 2.5 pounds per gallon is the right amount?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing was just experience. We've definitely tried more, and we've seen diminishing returns above 2.5 gallons. Don't get me wrong, we've done it before, but I think at a certain point in time, you're just adding way too much sweetness and getting just like kind of the same amount of flavor. So that's kind of just where we landed as the perfect line of not getting losses, not too much sweetness. Don't get me wrong, it is still very sweet, but it's not as sweet as say 3 and 3.5 pounds, which we've tried.
Wow.
We have done, 1 pound per gallon, and 1.5 pound per gallon, which we do think does create a really good product. And we do that for things like, let's say, like our coffee coconut, where we want other flavors to come through. But on just the straight coconut, we go pretty hard.
Wow. That's amazing. Well, you got some other interesting beers in the works. Let's see, you've got Oreo marshmallow and vanilla bubble wrap.
Yeah.
How do you get a flavor like Oreo into the beer?
Yeah, so bubble wrap is a cool project that we've been doing every couple years with some of our good friends in the brewing industry. It's Other Half in New York, the Vale in Virginia, Side Project in St. Louis, and then This year we're adding in Angry Chair down in Tampa. And so what this project is we all kind of pick a barrel that kind of really represents our barrel program. We split it up and we send each other parts of that barrel. When I say parts, I mean liquid from that barrel, so just like a keg. And then we each take in each other's barrels and then we blend it in house with more of our stock. And then we all kind of do what we want with it. And it's kind of a fun project because we'll all, throughout the course of the next 6 months, we'll all be releasing our own version of bubble wrap. And then some people like to do not adjuncted. So side project usually doesn't add adjuncts to theirs. And, we like to do something a little bit wild. Oreo marshmallow vanilla is something that we did the first year that we did this project. And we haven't brought it back since. So it's been about probably 5 years since we've done that, which is pretty crazy in my mind because it feels like just yesterday. But Oreo is just something that has always been really fascinating that we use. We do an Oreo beer with a local ice cream shop every summer to kind of kick off our stout season. And so Oreo we've become very familiar with. And that's, a big thing again is just getting the right stuff. So we get Oreo pieces. We usually do about 200 pounds in 6 barrels. So that's about 35 pounds per, or sorry, so 1.2 pounds per gallon. Again, a very high number,
That's
astronomical
a little crazy
number.
too. Yeah.
Another irresponsible stout. Again, when we make our stouts, I like to say that they're irresponsible stouts because they're not the most cost efficient, the most savvy way of doing it maybe, but we like to really make sure we're hitting all the flavors that we say we hit. So when we're adding in these coconuts into the into our adjunct vessels, and the thing with marsh or with something like Oreos is they do start to kind of break down. So you have to be very careful with filtering it afterwards. So we put it through a candle filter usually, because you'll get some of that mush in there. Having a little bit of that oil slick from the coconut, a little bit of the oil coming off, like or in the coconut beers is okay. Having a little bit of the oil that's going to come off the cream filling of an Oreo is okay. But I think actually like having like full on like a chunk of Oreo, some people might enjoy, some people might not. I know.
So
I know.
I'm trying to understand. Are you putting the actual cream in as well? Just
Oh,
not.
we're putting a full. So we get Oreo pieces like just crushed up Oreos, and we were actually putting those into the beer and recirculating on top of it. So parts of it are like, so we're actually pulling it right out from the Oreo.
It's amazing. Are you? What about vanilla bubble wrap? What does that mean?
So the bubble wrap is the name of the whole beer, and then for when we're doing the Oreo part, we also have vanilla beans in there. So for vanilla beans, it can be really tough to do vanilla beans really well. I think we have a pretty good process. So we are hand cutting vanilla beans. We do scrape out the inside, but then we are also still using the bean itself. I know that there are other ways of doing it. If I was a home brewer, I'd probably put it in a blender with vodka, but we cannot use any sort of ethanol in our brewery other than what we produce, just because it's illegal, that's fortifying. So we don't do that, but I know that people have had great success at home brews using bourbon or vodka to sanitize. Again, that's part of the reason why we bought a pasteurizer, was to make sure that we can use ingredients like vanilla that aren't sanitary, like Oreos that aren't sanitary necessarily for beer spoilers. They are sanitary, but you know what I mean. And for beer spoilers, they're not necessarily sanitary. And so that's what big reason why we bought a pasteurizer was our barrel aged stuff.
Well, you're also introducing a double barrel amberana beer. What does double barrel mean, and also what's an amberana?
Yeah, so double barrel to us, a lot of breweries do things differently when they consider double barrels, but for us, we're aging a beer in barrels for at least 12 months, and then we are taking that liquid from that barrel and putting it into a secondary barrel. Sometimes to finish it for 6 months, sometimes we age again extended times. The longest we've ever done, we did a triple barrel. So we went from one set of barrels. After a year, we transferred to another set of barrels, aged it another year, went to a third set of barrels and aged it for a third year. It was one of the oakiest beers we've ever made. Very dry, um, pretty moderate in tannins considering the amount of oak that it touched and the length that we aged it for. So it was 3 years, 3 separate sets of barrels. It was a very crazy beer. We probably will not do that one again just because of the time and effort it took to make sure that we were staying on top of that one. But it was a lot of fun to do it and say we did it. So when I talk about double barrel for this, so amberana, we'll go into amberana first. So amberana is a tree that is grown in South America. It's in Brazil, Peru, Argentina. So when we're looking, the big one that they use it for is called cachaça. It's a spirit that's made of sugarcane in Brazil, and it's they use amberana wood to make barrels, and then they age this cachaça, which would probably be closest compared to rum because it's sugarcane, but I would say it's not very close to rum. So it is aged in this wood from this tree in the Brazilian rainforest, and amberana is this crazy wood. It literally tastes like apple pie and cinnamon, and has these really, really, really awesome flavors just from the wood itself. And getting amberana barrels in America has been a thing that we've been trying to do for years. And so like sometimes you'll see amberana wood coming in, and they've been cachaça's been aged in it. X Spirit has been aged in it, and we were lucky enough to get 6 that only held bourbon for about 6 weeks. So we have a couple of these amberana barrels. So what we did is we took something that was aged for 20 months in 12-year-old Rip Van Winkle bourbon barrels, and then we moved it into these amberana barrels. So we made probably what I like to call one of the most expensive barrel aged stouts that we've ever made, because amberana wood is so expensive. The 12-year-old Rip Van Winkle or 10-year-old Rip Van Winkle barrels were very expensive. And then so once we're in the amberana barrel, we've been resting now at this point for about 8 months. We're really excited to pull that out. So we're going to get a lot of these really crazy bourbon expressions from the Rip Van Winkle barrels, but then we're also going to get a lot of this like pie spice. And when I tell you that amberana stuff that comes out of amberana tastes like an apple pie, it tastes like an apple pie. It is so crazy that it has, the cinnamon. It tastes like, the spice. Just it's so crazy. It has a little bit of apple.
Have you had a chance to sample it yet?
Yeah, so we actually released a double barrel amberana beer when we first got them. We did a quick 6-month age in them, and like I said, it's one of my favorite things maybe of all time was that first one, and I'm very excited for this one because we did an extended age on it. Plus, just that those amberana barrels are so unique. There's really, if you've never had it, there's nothing else like it in barrel age without adding in apples and cinnamon yourself. This is just all from wood, and it's just something that I've been so excited for a long time. And Neil and I have been searching for these barrels for the better part of 5 years, and to be able to find them has been really awesome. I mean, at one point in time, we discussed flying to Brazil and renting a U-Haul in Brazil and driving them back ourselves, but we were finally able after 5 years to
That's
get
a long
these
drive.
barrels. It would be a pretty rough drive. I don't think there's a reason why we never actually did it.
Yeah, probably not a good idea.
Yeah.
Well, finally, you have a Bam Bam Noche, which supposedly tastes like white chocolate and fruity pebbles. And I guess it's a sour beer too, is what you're saying.
Yeah. So
how do you do something like that?
Yeah. So Bam Bam Rubble Rubble is a sour beer that one of our sales guys, Mike Nelson, came up with years ago, and it's based off Bam Bam cereal. So there's a local shop here, sub shop, that makes Rice Krispie treats with different cereals. I think they're kind of common at this point, but
Sure.
So marshmallow and cereal. So he kind of had the idea, let's do like something that tastes like the Fruity Pebbles cereal with marshmallow in a sour beer. And so we kind of did that, and it's been something that's been one of our longest running sour brands that we've done. It's very successful for us, and it's really awesome. And this year, with it being coming up, we're leading into next year. Will be, our 10th anniversary was this year, but our 10th anniversary for Media Noche and Juicy Bits will be next year. So we're kind of leading up. We're kind of looking at all the fun things that we've done over the years and finding ways to kind of combine them with this 10-year celebration of Media Noche.
So did you put the Fruity Pebbles right in the beer?
So we do put Fruity Pebbles right in the beer. And then for this stout, we're going to do white chocolate because we think it sounds a little bit more fun. So this won't be sour. This will be based on our sour beer, we're going to make a
Okay.
medianoche, and then we're going to combine the name. So, like I said,
So
the
the
name of
fruit, but the
the
Fruity Pebbles, the Oreos, and all this stuff, does it go in the mash? Does it go in
so
fermenter?
yeah. So with in the sour beer, it would go in the mash as well as some in the from in like the adjunct vessels later on. But for this barrel aged stout, we're going to do it all after the aging, because I didn't have the foresight to make to put Fruity Pebbles into the mash of a random medianoche 3 years ago. Some of these
Yeah, yeah,
ideas,
yeah.
but if I did, that'd be really cool. Maybe we'll do it now just because we're talking about it. But so yeah, we'll be now that we're done aging, we'll pick out some barrels that have some really good characters, that have some white chocolate characters, and then we'll go in and we'll kind of add. So our plan, white chocolate is such a hard flavor because white chocolate is mostly just cacao. I mean, it's cacao butter, so it's like the waste of chocolate process added with sweetness and vanilla. So it's really, really, really even more fatty and oily than say
Great
coconut.
for head
So
retention, right?
it's even worse. So and the flavor of it isn't really much. So what we're gonna do this year is we're gonna use pieces of white chocolate itself, just regular white chocolate. But then we're also going to do a huge vanilla addition, and then we're going to do a light cacao nib addition to try to really nail in that white chocolate flavor. I've heard of people having really good success with that. And then Fruity Pebbles, we're going to get a lot of Fruity Pebbles, and we're going to do very similar to what we do with Oreos, and we're going to add those in. I think we're going to try to start pretty low. So, instead of 1.2 pounds per gallon, we're probably going to go pretty low, try for like a 0.5, see how that goes, and then we'll continuously introduce more until we get to a flavor that we think is really
That
good.
still sounds like a lot to me. Half a pound per gallon.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's a
I
lot
mean,
of
it
Fruity
is.
Pebbles.
It's a lot of Fruity Pebbles, and luckily we've been able to start sourcing stuff in these large quantities and find ways of doing it, because that's always a struggle too, is finding stuff. But I think we have it prepared. This will be kind of a smaller run because of its uniqueness and potentially just a little bit more of like a selected audience. So
Yeah.
this will be a much smaller run than something like our coconut that gets national distro.
So you
So
don't need 2,000 pounds of Fruity Pebbles
no, no,
then.
no, no, no. I'm
No.
hoping that we can get away with like enough that maybe if worst case scenario we can just buy all of the Fruity Pebbles in
That's
our
funny.
area.
Awesome. Well, where can folks buy and find out more about WeldWerks Brewing and WeldWerks beers?
On all social medias, we have stuff, weldworksbrewing.com or weldworks.com. We do have a tracker. We're available in, I want to say, 38 to 40
I was going to
states
say you
around the
got pretty
country.
broad distribution now. I know.
Yes, we do. Yeah, we have a lot of really great distribution partners, and we're doing a lot of distribution. So Juicy Bits should be all over the country. And then again, the 2025 Coconut Medianoche will be releasing in April, and that will see pretty much all of our distribution partners should be getting some. So be on the lookout for that in the stores. We're very excited for the first time to be able to bring coconut to a large audience. It's been something that we've been working on for 2 or 3 years now, bringing more media noches to a larger market, and to be able to bring one of our favorites to more people is just awesome.
Yeah, so I mean, something your mainline beers like Juicy Bits, those are available very broadly, but I assume a lot of these
Mm.
specialty stouts are probably more limited distribution, or no?
They are just the allocation, the amount that's sent out is a little bit different. So the markets are probably based on, the distributors will probably all get equal chances, but how much they buy and where they bring them is kind of their decision. And the pricing is their decision. But, we have a pretty reasonable price that we like to see, that we recommend. And hopefully, it's able to get to places where a lot of people are. I know New York City will probably get a lot. They tend to get a good amount, and then um, other big markets would be like Iowa, so they'll see some.
Yeah,
I can't think off the top of my head. North Carolina, of course, Colorado, California, so Texas. I
and
see some
your
big.
location in Fort Collins too.
Our location is in Greeley, Colorado. We will
Really,
have
I'm
that as
sorry,
well. Yeah, you're good.
Elk Brewing. Go ahead,
Yeah.
but yeah. What can you tell us where you're located for folks that might want to drop by the tap room? That
So
was my
we are
point.
in Greeley, Colorado, right downtown of Greeley, Colorado, which is about 50 minutes north of Denver. And if you're familiar with Fort Collins, we're about 40 minutes southeast of Fort Collins. So
Well, thank you, Skip. I really appreciate you being here today and taking the time to join us again.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
My guest today, the one and only Skip Schwartz, head brewer at WeldWerks Brewing. Thanks again, Skip.
Thank you.
A big thank you to Skip Schwartz for joining me this week. Thanks also to Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine. They recently added a new collection of more than 500 beer recipes from pro brewers to their site, and most let you download the BeerSmith recipe file. The new craft beer and brewing recipe site is at beerandbrewing.com/beer-recipes. Again, that new site is beerandbrewing.com/beer-recipes. And BeerSmith Web, the online version of BeerSmith brewing software. BeerSmith for the web lets you design great beer recipes from any browser, including your tablet or phone. Edit recipes on the go with access to the same full suite of recipe building tools as our desktop version. Try BeerSmith Web today by creating a free account at beersmithrecipes.com. And finally, a reminder to click that like and subscribe button on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, or whatever platform you're listening on. Clicking those buttons is a great way to support the show. I'd like to thank you for listening, and I hope you have a great brewing week.